measuring on the MCAs, you can see that we didn't meet that goal. We still have that trend I still believe is going up. We used to be, when we were down here in 13, 14, we're always going, we just want to get to the state average, and now that's not a goal any longer. We're there, we're above that. We want to keep trending upward. And so for us, really looking at growth is going to be huge. So continuing to not be satisfied with state average, but continue to look at growth for us as a third grade reading proficiency. This is all of us. I'm not sure this is you.
Yeah, this is K-12 reading, and like John mentioned previously, when we were working even before 2014 to try to improve at least to the state average or get above the state average. And you know, it's a nice picture, I think, up here. It shows pretty clearly that, you know, we've not only met the state average, but now we're exceeding the state average by a nice gap. And our goals this year are to improve even more. Obviously, we just want to do that every year. So that's, I think, good news. Math, a similar, maybe not the same trend as reading, but a positive trend in the fact that we are making steady progress throughout the district on our math goals and being above the state average. Again, our goal is to keep improving in that area. So that's another nice picture, I think. That's it. See, I had the easy part, right?
So the next goal area talks about achievement gap reduction. And when we were talking about achievement gap reduction, that's when we look at a group of students. So in this example, students who receive free and reduced lunch, and then we compare it to the group of students who don't receive free and reduced lunch. So the different student groups we look at are free reduced lunch, students receiving special education services, and then some of our other student groups don't quite hit the number because it needs to be a cell size greater than 20 to look at them as a separate group by themselves. So the two that we really look at are students receiving free and reduced lunch and students receiving special education services. So what is tricky about achievement gap goals is because you want all students to improve. It's not like we want our students who are not receiving free and reduced lunch to do worse so that our free and reduced lunch students can catch up. That's not what we want. We want all students to improve. We just want those student groups that are to perform at an accelerated rate, and so they can catch up over time. So the goal areas were that in math, that achievement gap would decrease from 18.4% to 16.1% in 2018 for math. And then for reading, it was decreasing that gap from 12% to 10.1%. I did put this picture in here because this gives us, as we talk about the different programming we have in our district that help our students who are facing different barriers in their learning. And this kind of graphic shows that all students come in with different foundations. So students come to us with all different background knowledge, learning experiences, home life. And then also the fence represents the kind of barriers that they may have to their learning. And that's not equal for all students. So some students will have higher foundations, lower foundations, and then for the barriers, it would either be higher or lower. And these boxes really represent what we can provide at the school to help them achieve where we want them to achieve. So again, it may not look equal for all students. I mean, this picture is everybody gets one box, but you can see some students still can't see over the fence in that graphic. But for some students, they do need more. And so we want to give them that more of what they need so they can see over the fence. So that's kind of that equity perspective. And the programs we think of that are like targeted services, Title I programming, our ATSIS programming, all to help students receive that additional support that they need. So this is what our data looks like for students receiving free reduced lunch. So the top is math. And so the red trend line are students who don't receive free and reduced lunch. And then the blue trend line is our student group that do receive free and reduced lunch. So that achievement gap in math, we did meet the goal because it was at 14.8%. And so we do see that trend for this student group has been increasing And then we see that the other student group actually decreased slightly from 17 to 18. So we don't want that to happen. We actually want that group to improve too. So it's just a matter of making sure all of our students are increasing, but that this group, these student groups are increasing at an accelerated rate. And then for reading, we see that we've had nice increases there. So you see from 68.2 to 71.8. And then the students receiving free and reduced lunch increased from 56.2 to 59.2. So nice increases, but we didn't quite make the goal that we had set for that area.
So sometimes there's this false belief that just because a student has a disability, that we shouldn't expect them to achieve and excel like their grade level peers. That's not true. We want our students to graduate and achieve just like their classmates. There is still a gap. And what we know is that the rate at which the gap for special ed students or students with disabilities is actually widening in our district. And we can't figure out, well, I have some ideas as to why. We're still above the state average in both reading and math. So our students with disabilities are achieving at a higher rate than other students in the state. But we're not growing at the rate as students without disabilities. So we need to focus on how can we accelerate the growth of our students who happen to have an IEP. A few things that we're doing already is we have co-taught English classes in grades 6 through 12. We're seeing growth in our MCA scores as a result of that. We know that exposing students to the core instruction is very important. Exposing them to grade level vocabulary is critical, or they will never pass the test and they will never achieve. In math, we've started co-taught at the middle school level, and we'll continue to see what the effectiveness of that is, once again, exposing students to core. But now we need to look at other pieces to that. Not every student is ready to be in core for the entire amount of their instructional time. They need a second dose where they are at. And so our focus right now is looking at what materials are we using and are they effective to narrow the gap. College and career readiness, sorry, Betsy.
This goal at the high school, 80% of students having a career plan, a college and career plan, and we've far exceeded that. We can't say that 100% of those ninth grade students have that plan in place. There are always a few students that maybe came in late. We had to catch them up, or we just couldn't get them to complete it. But that is part of our ramp up to readiness programming that you've heard about in the past, and we have exceeded this goal basically quite easily. So we're well over 92%. The next, you press the down arrow, there we go. You've seen this previously. This is our own high school career pathway wheel. We are in the process now. We started in November, December, and we'll have kind of some updated versions of this probably in mid-January. We'll have those ready to help with students registering and making choices in their programming for the next school year. And this slide talks about the 11th grade students meeting college readiness benchmarks as per the ACT test. A few years ago, I think will be our fourth. 11th grade students all take the ACT across the state of Minnesota. This is the 11th grade data. These results change as the group of students moves into their senior year. So, for example, this blue 57%, when these students were juniors, 57% of them scored at the college readiness according to the ACT test, which means about half of the students are likely to earn passing grades of B in college. ACT is a college success predictor. As those students went into their graduating year, their final ACT data was right steady at 57%. And several of these data points do say the same, and some go up. So for example, this 50% as those kids graduated, it went to 53. I won't go through all of those points, but just showing you, this gives you that 11th grade, the picture of those kids in 11th grade, and then they move forward. The data that you see for ACT from me, from Andrea later, that shows the graduating class, sometimes those students take the test 4 times, and the best score always is included in the data. And this is the graduation rate. Our goal is that we'll have 90% students graduating in all of the student groups, no student group below 85%. This is becoming an ambitious goal. What's the matter? Oh, I thought I was messing up there. I've done that before, so that wouldn't be a surprise. We have been cited by the Department of Education, Minnesota Department of Ed, for not meeting the graduation rate set by ESSA for the special education student group. We've missed it just by a bit. And graduation data, as board members know, is always a year delayed. So in 17, we were at 66.86% of students in special education not graduating in 4 years, and the threshold is 67%. So we were very close, but we are not using that as an excuse. We actually consider that perhaps a lucky warning, because we've been digging into the data and we see some concerns. We've had some concerns prior to this. Karen, additional.
Sure. So this is general district graduation rate trends. You can see that the red is the statewide average, the blue is Princeton, and overall we still are above the statewide average for our students as a whole. As we look at special ed 4-year trends, once again, we're consistently above the state average for our graduation rates for students who happen to also have a disability. What we noticed is that in 2016 to 2017, that number changed. It appears to be significantly. We're not talking about a large number of students. So we have dug into the data. We know that under IDEA, students are eligible if they need so to stay in school through their 21st birthday. And we have designed a robust program in our district to support students who need those transition skills. That number has grown as our program has grown, and that's okay. We want that group of students to stay with us, to receive that instruction and transition into our community successfully and as independently as possible. Where we have a growing concern is the pocket of students who have left our programs and we don't know why. What we have met with a team at the high school. We're meeting with staff, guidance counselors to dig into that why. We've looked at data all the way back to 14, 15 and are literally itemizing what are our key indicators. We are choosing to look at both students with and without disabilities because that really shouldn't be the underlying factor. We know that there are kids who do not graduate from our high school and other high schools that happen to have an IEP. There are many that do not, that could have. It's just how the system works. So we're digging into that, and we're specifically looking at the kids that we don't know why they're left. And we're starting to look at not only their high school data, but digging into historical middle school data as well, because we know that for some of our students, we can really start to predict things if we look at the data correctly. Our goal is, through the support of the Department of Education, by March 1st, we'll be presenting to you a plan for how we're going to move forward with improvement and target the students who are not graduating.
This is basically showing what we've been talking about. There's a 4-year graduation rate and a 7-year graduation rate. So we are held to that 4-year graduation rate. We don't get forgiveness if the student does graduate in 7 years, for example. But we do look at both of those rates, and we know that 7 years is appropriate for many students.
This is
Free and reduced lunch. So you can see that this trend is moving downward. These students are also sometimes special education students, sometimes not. So we'll look at the students that cross over, and I think that who's on mission is that. I was gonna say, is that Ben, but that's right, he's not talking.
All right, so World's Best Workforce and the signposts that are set up through the state of Minnesota that help us track our data and create action plans. That is the first part of the presentation, and it would be remiss of us if we didn't also talk about our internal strategic plan in Princeton as it supports World's Best Workforce outcomes and goals. So mission, as you know, of Princeton Public Schools is an innovative leader in instruction, developing in every learner the ability to succeed in every world. I have seen continuously from the time I've been here, folks engaging and re-engaging in this overall mission. So what we need as a successful school district is admin, teachers, the team members owning this statement and the vision that goes with it. And I see that happening in multiple places. The vision that will equip every student to be career and college ready through personalized instruction, community partnerships, and collaboration. So in addition to those items in World's Best Workforce, we're taking deliberate action to make this happen. Specifically in personalized instruction, we've taken some actions to create a visual that can kind of ground us in how we make sure that students get what it is that they need. So we have engaged in, as you know, Marzano instructional framework and the instructional strategies that come with it that are evidence-based strategies that increase student learning. And we've had multiple trainings, staff development, deep staff development. And what it may have felt like to teachers is, here's some good strategies, and here's some more good strategies, and wouldn't you like some strategies? And how about these for strategies? Knowing all of them are evidence-based and increase student learning, it was to the point of getting overwhelming and needing some sort of structure to hang it on. So taking a look at this, the core instruction and where our trainings and professional development have happened, that we're organizing in a way that we agree this is how core instruction works so that we can personalize instruction for all students. So we'll notice, for example, when we're giving students a task and we're trying to elicit their evidence of learning, it will come to our attention who got it, who doesn't, therefore who needs an adaptation and who doesn't. And there's an opportunity to plan in the moment what that would look like. It was also sort of missing some context. So all of these strategies, what was the point? It was to build a culture that is a student-centered classroom with graders. So a place where students really own their learning, where they understand they can activate peers as resources in addition to the teacher or any resources of materials or online. A place where they understand making mistakes is a normal thing and it is an opportunity for learning. So it gives us an opportunity to look at what went wrong here and what would I need to do to fix it. There was also a phrase that we started to use last year that's called live-it analysis, and it's really talking about the way we ask children to use their brain. Professional development last year centered around these orange highlighted areas, but live-it analysis kind of became a secondary theme where we understand that if we're asking students to memorize things or even tell us what it means in their own words, they're really using their short-term memory, and you can lose what you learn there. So, anybody know algebra once upon a time? Yeah, we did. We memorized it. We got it at the time. I can't do it anymore because my brain stayed here. But if we start to do some analysis and think about why or what's different or what's this like or how does it relate to me, we actually connect that knowledge to our long-term memory. So then the act of analysis makes it move in our brains to a place where we can recall it later and apply it to different situations. So that phrase live-it analysis is something teachers are talking about and planning analysis questions into lessons, sprinkling them in. How do you know it's a 3 and not a 5? Our professional development last year started with Dylan William, and he is one of really the world experts on formative assessment. Formative assessment basically means we understand what kids already know and what they don't know yet. And by knowing that, that's probably the most powerful thing we can know in instruction, because if we know what they already know and what they don't know yet, we know what to teach them and what they can adapt to. So we started with him in kind of an overview. We're going back and deepening our understanding in that this year. So it's not new. It's not, here's another thing, here's another thing. It's deepening our understanding of how do we use these powerful things with students.
That's the tomorrow.
Yeah.
We have them here tomorrow.
It is. Career and college ready portion of the strategic plan. Barb already talked about this portion in relation to the world's best workforce. I would add that part of our action steps last year was the career crawl that all teachers went on exploring area businesses. I would say one of the most beautiful outcomes of that action step was teachers opening kind of hearts and minds to alternatives to four-year education. Like, there are awesome things our people do in Princeton that are totally valid career paths that don't necessarily have to follow the path I took. So both career and college ready is important. In terms of digital learning, we have completed our one-to-one device initiative, I guess you'd call it, early. So all of our students now have one-to-one devices, grades 3 through 12, as well as our teachers. And we continue to support use of technology through embedding practices that bring Princeton Paradigm to life and just strengthening learning experiences day to day. I think the last piece is communication. And there are a couple of action steps here that are important. One is we've trained all staff to start using the Princeton branding, so we have a cohesive image in the community. We have designed communication loops with staff so that the communication is stronger. I wrote myself notes, so I don't remember what to tell you. Oh, recruiting students early and improving district-wide Tiger Pride. And I think last and maybe most important is strengthening the culture that exists in the district into a welcoming culture and a customer service oriented.
Yeah, what do you got for questions? Yeah, I mean, this is kind of captures the essence of some of the work that happened last year. Obviously, these folks could talk to you all night. So it was exciting to be able to pull together some work, and I think how I started off at the very beginning, pleased but not satisfied captures really what was great results. We know we got a lot of work to do yet, and I think that when we collect data, all data, there's never any bad data, because even if the data demonstrates something that you demonstrate better, it really helps you recognize it can be better and helps you kind of plan and improve. But like I said, I think one of the biggest things that we're recognizing is we're trying to organize our structure in Princeton into how we do business and align our work. Is where does the world's best workforce fit in with our strategic plan, and where does that fit in with our big rocks that we're using discussing around in terms of our work? So we just don't want anything to be looked at as like a different thing. We don't want the world's best workforce to be looked at as differently than our strategic plan, and our strategic plan to be looked at differently than our day-to-day operations. Alignment is what we're going for. We're making some progress there, but I think we have some work to do to see how does the world's best workforce fit into what we're doing. Other questions? Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much. And I told them all that they should leave. They got a lot going on. I think tomorrow morning we got an early morning. So unless you're presenting at the work meeting,